The development corridors, as you can see, they run through protected areas, particularly in the Savo Conservation Area, and that being a key wildlife habitat, we expect that the continuous line of the SGR, for instance, will block the movement of wildlife and therefore impeding their access to different resources in the landscape, like water, key grazing areas, but also impeding on their ability to adapt to climate change, particularly in this era of high climate diversity. They're not able to, move around following resources up and down. The other most important bit is the fact that when wildlife try to cross some of the roads around, they get knocked down by vehicles, particularly speeding vehicles across the entire ecosystem, leading to a lot of road kills. If you drive along that road, you see a lot of wildlife, both domestic and wild animals killed by vehicles.
At the Department of Geography in the University of Cambridge, we are responsible for carrying out research on social, political, and economic effects of large-scale infrastructures. We are particularly interested in understanding how these mega projects affect the livelihoods and everyday practices of vulnerable groups of people. That is, we are seeking to understand what kind of challenges and benefits they bring to these communities. And with the aim of this research is to provide research-based policy recommendations to ensure social sustainability of mega project implementation.
So specifically, we're looking at two areas of large overseas investment in Tanzania and Kenya. In Tanzania, we're looking at the Kilimanjaro Valley. In Kenya, we're looking at the Standard Gauge Railway, or the SGR. In both of those sites, we're looking at what we call future scenarios. So we're trying to understand what the future land use would be like as a result of those infrastructure developments. So essentially, we developed a land use futures tool called Kesho. It means tomorrow in Kiswahili. And effectively what we use is a tool where we bring lots of stakeholders together, lots of consultation over days and days of workshops, bringing in perspectives from conservationists, from engineers, from agronomists, from land use managers, to really understand the impact on land that these large investments are having.
In the DCP project, we mainly focus on research on China's investment in the development corridors in East Africa and its impact, especially environmental impacts. As one of the top investors in Africa, it is important for China to align its investment with SDGs. We hope our research findings can contribute to this. It is great to work together with the UK and African colleagues in this project, lend their professional knowledge and ideas on EIA, and exchange our views.
All countries in the world have, by law, a process through which impacts on biodiversity and on people are assessed. This is commonly known as impact assessment. There are two instruments that we know very well. Strategic environmental impact assessment, which assesses the alternative at a large scale involving a wide range of stakeholders and alternatives, and impact assessment, environmental impact assessment, which is done at a project level, which we all know about. The problem is that these tools, we know that in many cases they don't work, and some projects go ahead and have serious impacts on nature and on people. So our research is looking at better ways of making this process be improved, so that the benefits and the impacts of these projects are better managed and we can get from them the best we can.
Our team is undertaking the task of enhancing the adaptive capacity to climate change for the development corridors in East Asia. We first assess the climate risks of LAPSSET and SGR in Kenya, the SAGCOT in Tanzania. Then to propose the effective adaptation pathways for these corridors. Our work is mainly focusing on SAGCOT corridor in Tanzania. We will work out a study report on adaptation planning for this corridor.
Our main role under this project is to research on how development projects implemented in development corridors of Tanzania can be designed to deliver a sustainable, inclusive, and resilient economic growth. Therefore, Team in SUA, we are conducting scientific researches, capacity building programs, and trainings on biodiversity and ecosystem services issues, climate change issues, and land use changes issues in development corridors of Tanzania.
We realized that when we are going on these economic activities and especially forest investment, we need to set aside conservation areas, because these conservation areas, they are very important to offer the habitats for the pollinators. As I said, that we realize that there is high number of pollinators in the natural habitat as compared to the modified one. But also, we have what we call the ecosystem services, of which these are goods and benefit that man can derive from the ecosystem. And we have several. We have 4 categories of ecosystem services. These are provisional, regulating, cultural, and supporting services, of which also our study shows that more of these ecosystem services are derived from the natural ecosystem as compared to the modified one.
LAPSSET Beijing provides oversight and coordinates the China team of the Development Corridors Partnership. The DCP China team consists of experts and advisors from some of the top think tanks in China, including the Chinese Academy of Agricultural Sciences, the Chinese International Trade and Economic Cooperation, as well as the National Center for Strategy and International Cooperation. We're very excited to be working with such a dynamic and strong technical and policy advisory team.
So far, our research shows that although the technical aspect of impact assessment can always be improved, the problem is not there. The problem is lack of implementation. On one hand, there is lack of capacity to implement the laws and regulations and procedures that were agreed in each country. On the other hand, there is lack of transparency and considerable corruption that allows some projects that should have never been accepted as they were proposed to go ahead with serious environmental and social consequences. So the problem is that if there is a process, it doesn't mean that the process is going to work. A process is not enough. There need to be resources to make that process work.
Now, in terms of the next steps for this research, I mean, as I mentioned at the beginning, we are kind of pioneering research on development corridor as it interacts with the social and ecological systems in the country, and therefore we are generating very important evidence, data, and information that needs to find relevance within government institutions, the private sector, as well as the civil society. So my next view is that we need to find ways to communicate this information clearly and influence its inclusion in the policy processes to ensure that whenever governments and other institutions plan expansion